Okay, so it's about 26, 27 of them. All right. Very good, folks. Well, look, we're going to start off the session this afternoon. I've got my colleague Stuart here with me. I think you can see him. Well, here he is. That's it. Give a wave. Yeah. So you probably know Stuart's my sort of partner in the company. So yeah, we're going to do that. What I will do, rather than you sort of watch me and Stuart talk to each other, I'll just have the screen up, whatever. And then, because most of the action, in a sense, will be taking place on the screen. Now, look, we're going to make the thing probably unrealistically quick, a fairly sort of quick interview, and then EFIT construction. But I hope it will still nonetheless be some use in showing the kind of perhaps the way that we navigate through EFIT6. So without further ado, then I'm going to just share with you what I think is the blank screen of when you start an EFIT. Just confirm maybe if you can that you can see that. So it should be that. Yeah. Yeah, everybody see this, the EFIT startup form? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I like to see those thumbs up. Very good. All right then. Well, thank you very much for coming in today, Stuart. I'd like you to just begin, if you could, further to what we discussed earlier, to give me the best description you can of the person that you remember from the incident on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, so I say the person was in their, well, maybe in their 50s, mid-50s, something like that.
Okay, mid-50s, yeah.
And well, it was a black male.
Yeah, black male.
And he had very short hair, I remember.
Yeah.
And he also had a moustache.
Right.
I think those are the most distinctive features, but I also remember his eyes were a little bit bulged. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
So that sort of almost as if they were slightly sort of popping out of his head a little bit.
Slightly sort of bulging eyes.
Bulging eyes, yes. I think that's the best way that I could describe it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that immediately comes to mind?
Don't think there are any other very distinctive things about him. Those were the main things that I remember.
Okay.
I mean, obviously I only saw him for a short period of time, but
okay, yeah. So let me just read that back to you. So you're saying we've got a black male in his mid-50s, short hair.
Yes.
Had a moustache, slightly bulging eyes.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he was wearing?
Oh, I think he was wearing a suit. Yeah, yeah, he was wearing a suit. Right. So a dark suit, possibly a black suit.
Okay, dark suit.
And that he had a tie on. So he was wearing a white shirt and he had a tie on.
Okay. And what about his overall build? Did you get an impression of that?
Yeah, I did get a sense of his build. I think he was fairly stocky, but I would say athletic. You know, not
not chubby.
Not chubby. No,
yeah.
Athletic. Like I say, fairly big build. I got an impression it was quite a big guy, probably quite tall.
Yeah,
but certainly quite strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned he was in his mid-50s. Is there anything in particular that sort of led you to feel that you could articulate, or not really?
Maybe he was just beginning to grey.
Okay.
And also his skin would suggest, I think, that he was about of that age. So slight wrinkles. And yeah, maybe the sort of overall structure of the face suggested that he was of that age, around 55.
Okay.
So I'd say he could have been anywhere between 50 and maybe early 60s, but my best guess would be around 55.
All right. Okay, good. So Stuart, I'm just going to read back to you what we've got, and then we'll basically start the EFIT. Okay. So you said he's black man, you know, in his mid-50s, possibly slightly greying with slight wrinkles, short hair, moustache.
Yep.
Eyes were slightly bulging. He was wearing a dark suit with a white shirt and a tie. And you'd say that his general build was sort of fairly stocky but athletic.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Look, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use some software that's going to attempt at least to try and make a likeness of the person that you saw.
Okay.
Even if we get a general resemblance, it can be useful to us in the investigation.
Okay.
Okay, because if we show it within the force itself and possibly externally, all we really need is for it to trigger recognition, for somebody to give us a name that corresponds possibly to the image, and then really it's served its job.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do our best using this software. I think we'll I'll explain it to you as we go along. It's relatively straightforward to use. Okay. Do you have any immediate questions about using it?
No, I don't think so. So at the end of this process, we will have produced hopefully a facial likeness of the.
That's right.
Of
Yeah.
the person. Okay. Yeah.
That's
I
right. And
understand.
that will help us in the investigation.
Yeah, I understand.
Very good. All right. So look, we're just going to complete a few details in the form then. So you are Mr. James Bond, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, and you mentioned that he was male, black, and you thought the approximate age was about 50. Right?
Sorry, 55.
You thought more like 55?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Right. Okay, now what we're going to do in this first step here, Stuart, is you see these 9 head shapes here on the screen. I'd like you to choose, if you can, the one that you think best approximates the overall head and face shape of the person that you saw.
Okay. I would say the shape in the bottom left-hand corner.
This one here.
Yeah, I mean, I think
doesn't have to be exact.
Okay.
All right, because we can change it later. That's an important thing to understand. That this is just to try and get us in a way in the right ballpark. Okay. All right. So we're going to go next to basically just think about the nose. You didn't mention much about the features in the description.
No.
That's okay because maybe we don't always remember them. But I wonder if now looking at them, if you might be able to indicate which of those you think best approximates the shape of his nose as you remember it.
Okay. So
if you can't remember, we can skip it. But if you're able, it does help.
I do remember the nose being a little bit bulbous, so the end of the nose was quite rounded.
Right.
I think of those maybe the nose in the first row in the middle might be the best.
The first note, so this one here, basically.
That's the second row, so in the first row.
Oh, sorry, in the first row. This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, we just want to think about now the lips or the shape of the mouth. Again, if you feel able to choose one from that group which you think best approximates, bear in mind that we can change it later. Okay.
Okay.
But it's helpful to be in the right region to begin with.
Okay. All right. I think it's either the one right in the middle there,
yeah,
or bottom left. But if we were to go for the one in the bottom left, I'd like to make the mouth a bit bigger.
Okay. We can choose that, and then if we find that when we look at the images that the computer will create, it's a bit small, we can make it larger. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, we should take your time over this because here we're looking at the sort of overall shape of the eyes. So it takes a little bit of time, I think, to accommodate to them. But have a look and see if you feel able to choose from any of those shapes there. Okay, I just stress that we can skip this stage, but take your time, and if you feel that probably one matches better, then let me know.
Okay, so this is a bit difficult, but I would say the eyes in the bottom right hand corner.
Okay, so this one here. Yeah, okay. Right, and then finally, the eyebrows. Again, we didn't mention it in your description, but from your memory now, which do you feel would be? Again, we can skip it if you just have no memory at all. But
No, I think now that I see the eyebrows there, I am able to make a decision over which ones are good and which ones are not so good. And I would say probably the best of those is the second row far right.
Okay, this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were a little bit more tented, if you understand what I mean by that. So there was a little bit more of a sort of peak here and here in the eyebrows,
right, yeah.
but I think largely those are quite close.
All right. Well, we can probably make that adjustment later if that's clear. Okay. Okay, right. So what happened in a few moments, I hope, is you're going to see basically just a basic head or face shape that you chose. All right. And we're going to try and choose an appropriate hairstyle. All right. So I'm going to show you collection of hairstyles. And once I've entered the description, and I want you to tell me if any of them you feel are close to the hairstyle that the suspect.
Okay.
Okay, so you mentioned, I think, that the hair was short, yes?
Yeah, I mean, it was very short.
Very short or cropped. Possibly.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, let's have a look and see what we come up with here. Anything else about the hairstyle that you feel would describe it, or?
I think I mean, the hairline might have been very slightly receding. But I just, the main thing
you mentioned it was a black male. Would you say his hair, in a manner of speaking, was a typical of a black person's hair, or not really?
Yeah, I would say so, but very short. Yeah,
but very short. Okay, so look, we'll try the afro description here, and you can see that there's a sort of collection of hairstyles along here. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to show them to you in sort of groups of 5. If you see any that you think match, even with a bit of modification, let me know, and then we'll flag them. Okay. Any there?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so the hairstyle second from right.
Second from the, so this one?
Yes, yeah, that's a possibility.
Okay. Let's have a look at a few more.
Maybe the second one on the screen there.
This one?
Yeah.
To show you a few more so that we can get a sort of.
Yeah. Okay, maybe second from right.
This one here?
Again, second from right.
Let's just go through a few more, and then, oops, excuse me. What I'll do, if it's all right with you, Stuart, I'll go through them slowly, groups of 5, and you sort of shout if you see anything that you think looks appropriate.
One on the left. Sorry,
no,
if we go back.
Okay, they go back. Yeah. Have I gone back?
I think you've gone back 2, possibly.
But
yeah, maybe the one on the. Yeah, maybe that one second from left. Yeah.
Okay. So
I think now they're all sort of looking quite similar to me. Is it possible that we could see them on the?
Yeah. Okay. So these are the ones that you've basically selected so far. All right, possibilities. Should we load them on the head, and then you get some feeling of what they might look like and which you feel might be the best to start with. So that's one. Okay. Bear in mind that we can alter the hairstyle. All right. So I can actually make changes, effectively give it a haircut, or make grow it a bit. But maybe we could, if you're happy to, we'll begin with one, and then we can make the alterations as we need to.
I think that one is the best.
Probably that one is the best.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you're happy to go with that, what was the colour?
I think it was more black than that. So
More
that
black.
hair looks too brown for me.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Make it a bit darker if you need to. Is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, what's going to happen now, Stuart, is I'm going to show you a collection of 9 faces that the computer's created.
Okay.
Right. And I'd like you to take a look at them. And to begin with, I'm going to ask you to tell me the 2 or 3 that you feel are the worst, in the sense that the least like, overall, the least like the person that you saw.
Number 7.
So number 7 is a no. Okay. Oh, excuse me. What have I done there? Oh, so I accidentally clicked. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's because I accidentally did a right click when I was moving the mouse. Okay, so yeah, so no number 7.
Number 5. I don't think it looked like number 5.
Right, maybe reject one more.
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. And firstly, overall, which do you think is probably the closest? Just as an overall impression, even if it's not very close at the moment.
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay, so what's going to happen now, Stuart, is I'm going to have the computer generate a new group for you. Right? Just so you know, face number 4 will be amongst that group, but not in the same place. But the computer's going to try and create some variations about the face. That maybe you'll consider as being closer. Okay. Is that clear? Yeah. So if you could maybe repeat that process for me, just reject the 2 or 3 first of all that you think are the weakest.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
Number 6.
Number 6. Maybe tell me one more that we'll reject.
Number 8.
Number 8. Okay. All right. Now, of those that remain,
I think number 3.
Number 3.
Do you know what though? The eyebrows on number 9, I think are really quite good, but the rest of the face, I would say number 3 is better. Is there any way we can take the eyebrows from number 9 and put it on?
Yeah. Right, so what we can do is we can basically copy the eyebrows from number 9 so they appear on all of the other faces. All right, and then you can decide if you think then that number 3 is the best of the group, or indeed one of the others. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay. So what do you feel is the best of those that are there?
Could you zoom out a little bit, please?
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of number 4 and number 7, if I'm honest, and possibly a little bit of number 1. Can we do something about that?
Well, what we could try is that there is actually a little tool that we can use that can mix the faces together, which is called the blend tool. So what we'll do, I'll just show you how this works. So basically, we're going to select some of these faces. You tell me which ones are in a moment, and then the blended face is going to appear on the right. Right, now tell me which faces they were again, if you can, that you felt that
well, I think one. So number 7.
Number 7. Right, so what we'll do is put a bit of number 7 in there. So at the moment that's just number 7,
and now I look at them again, maybe a bit of number 3.
Bit of number 3. Right. Okay, so what you've got there is a roughly 50-50 mix of number 3 and number 7.
It's quite good. Yeah, I think that's quite good. I think the eyebrows were maybe a little bit longer, actually. So they didn't meet in the middle, but they're certainly a bit wider.
A bit wider. Okay.
So they were, closer to meeting in the middle, but not meeting in the middle, if that meant.
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Could we do anything about that? And
Yeah.
also the nose, the bridge of the nose up here is quite narrow.
Okay, so certainly we can do that. We'll narrow the bridge of the nose, move the eyebrows closer together.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, do you feel that what you're looking at there on the right hand side is better than any of the individual faces? You do. Okay, so we'll select that. All right, and then we'll try first to sort out the eyebrows. All right, so we're going to go to a tool that we call Move. Before I do it, or attempt to do it, would you say it's just a question of moving the eyebrows closer together or making them a bit longer?
I think they need to be wider. They need to be wider and a little bit closer together.
Okay. What I'll do them individually, right? If that's okay, first of all. So I just first of all make it a little bit wider. Right, you may notice the right eyebrow is becoming a little bit wider. And I'll just move their position a little bit till you feel that we're kind of getting in the right.
Yeah, it's better. Could you possibly rotate it clockwise just a little bit?
Clockwise, yes, that's that way, isn't it?
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one more.
One more.
Yeah, and then.
And the same with the other eyebrow?
Same with the other one. Yeah.
Okay. So and also you want me to rotate that?
Yes, please.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I think that's better.
All right. And then you wanted, I think you said the bridge of the nose made a bit more narrow, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I think that's too wide.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. How's that looking?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, just to confirm, this is what we had before, right on the left. After the changes you've got there.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah. Is it possible to make the eyebrows just a little bit wider still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's I'll select them both at the same time this time. Go here. And if I need to move them after I've stretched them a little bit more, you let me know. How we doing?
Yeah, and then maybe if we could just move them up just a tiny bit.
Move them up a bit, yeah. Okay, is that enough?
That's good.
Okay.
Can we just make them a little bit, sorry, a bit deeper as well? Just a little bit.
When you say deeper?
Yeah, so the vertical dimension, could you make that a bit bigger, the vertical?
Oh, sort of grow them the actual width.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I think I understand what you mean. Yeah, okay. So like that, you mean?
Mm.
Make them a bit thicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that?
Okay, that's better. Thank you.
All right. Good. I think if you're happy, of course, I'll make that hairstyle match a little bit better his head. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at that, Stu, what we could do is we can ask the computer to generate more examples. But looking at it now, is there anything specifically that you'd like to change? You did mention that he was fairly stocky guy and he was wearing a tie and a suit. Do you feel it might help to actually introduce it at this stage to get the overall feel of
I think
the kind
that
of
would
person?
be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see if we can do that. Maybe under the jackets we might find something suitable there. So I will. You stop if you see anything, but I think we know what we're looking for. Sort of suit and tie. Yeah, I think we saw something there, didn't we? Yeah, there's a few suits and ties there. You said I think it was dark, his suit, didn't you?
The suit was dark. I mean, it could have been black. I mean, it was very dark.
Okay. Well, what we may be able to do is actually make the suit a bit darker, sort of afterwards. But does that help to give some sense of his overall impression of how he was? What about the build?
Yeah, so I think I would if I would move the shoulders up a little bit, because he's, you know, I think he was a bit more sort of stocky.
Bit more stocky, right? So how about this? If I do that, you mean? Tell me when.
Yeah, that's better. I mean, I'd go a little bit more.
Even a bit more. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's quite sort of powerful looking build. You think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. What I'm going to suggest we do is I can certainly make the suit a bit darker if you want me to, but you also mentioned the shirt was white, so we can make the suit darker now. And for reasons I won't go into, we'll have to make the shirt whiter separately, right? Okay. Using a sort of paint program we have at the end. Are you happy to proceed from there? Yeah. Okay. Very good. So, Stuart, just coming back to your description, then you said, you know, that he had a moustache, you mentioned, and he also said he's sort of mid-50s, and that the eyes were sort of slightly bulging. Which do you think we can perhaps try to add next?
Should we have a look at the moustache?
Okay. Yeah. Well, perhaps I didn't say, you know, how thick was the moustache? Was it a proper full-grown moustache? Yeah, it was fairly thick. Fairly, okay. Fairly thick. Yeah. I'll show you some that we've got in the in the actual skin effects section. See if anything in there might actually work. So you can see here, some of them are just, you know, growth all around the face, and some are, some are just around the upper mouth. Anything there? I think maybe the one on the left, possibly. This one here? Yeah, I don't remember whether it came up the side of the face like that, but certainly the bit above the top of the lip looks about right to me. Okay. Shall we flag that one? And what I'll do, I can load it for the moment, and perhaps if I make it a little bit stronger like that, does that help? It's not bad. Yeah. Okay. Not bad. All right. Okay, very important. I'm not pushing you one way or the other, but was there any general facial growth at all? Or was it just strictly the moustache? Yeah, it was the moustache. I don't think there was any hair on the chin. So that is actually quite good in that respect. It wasn't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There wasn't a beard on the end of the chin. All right. Okay. So happy with that? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Let's have a look then. You mentioned that you see he had slightly bulging eyes. Is it because, you know, you in a sense you felt they were sort of, you know, sunken in the sockets, or? Yeah, so the sort of lids were a little bit puffy. That sort of gave the sense that the eyes were bulging. All right, let's see if we can find something that will break that effect. I'm already seeing something there that I think is appropriate, and that is the one in the middle. Right. Okay. So if we could just sort of tone that down a little bit, I think that might. Yeah. That's okay. That's good. Is it? Yeah. And I'll just look. I can keep it exactly as you want, but does it help if I actually drop the opacity, or? Yeah. Just move it up a tiny bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. About there. Just there. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think that's looking good now, but could we maybe make the skin look a little bit older, because that looks quite smooth and right. Yes, he does look quite young at the moment. Yeah. What I will do is just try to make him look generally a little bit older, and you tell me if you feel it actually is helping or not. I'll put them side by side. That's made him, I notice, a little bit fatter, so possibly, yes. So I realised I haven't switched on my aging tool a bit. What we'll do, excuse me, Stuart, right, we're back to where we started. Yeah. I just realised I hadn't switched on a particular tool. So I will try to make him look just a little bit older, and you tell me if you feel it actually helps or not.
Can we increase those wrinkles a little bit? Yeah, I think the wrinkles are good. I think the change in the face shape maybe not so good, but the wrinkles, I think the wrinkles work well.
So I think what we may be able to do then is I could probably just try to make the face a little bit more angular again. Let's see if that works. Is that helping?
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
All right, so definitely preferred that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. I mean, my memory of this person is not perfect, but then I only saw him for a short period of time. I think that is a reasonably good likeness. I think if there was one thing that I could change, it might be the hairline.
The hairline, yeah. Okay.
I seem to remember that he was receding a little bit on the temples. So,
yes. Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since everybody knows it's just a demo, we're going to stop now because maybe we'll do a little bit in the paint program to show people what you might be able to do subsequently. You know how we can alter the hairline.
Sure.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, folks. Well, thanks for sort of watching patiently. I'm conscious of the fact that for some of you that may not be desperately useful, for others I hope of some use. But I think essentially that covers most of the sort of ways in which we the sort of path, if you like, through EFIT. What we haven't done here, of course, I didn't want it to go on too long, is we haven't done any changes using Paint Shop, which is something that I'm hoping that we might come to now. Fine. I doubt that you'll actually recognise him. I think Stuart was trying to remember. Some of you might know him. The actor Idris Elba. Anybody know him? Yeah. I think I've actually got a picture of him somewhere. Hang on a minute. Just bear with me. It's just a bit of fun, isn't it? Really. But I think somewhere I think I've got. If you'll give me 1 minute, I might have a picture of him somewhere. Well, I couldn't find the picture I had of him. Never mind. But so I think that this is the guy that Stuart was trying to remember. Good. All right then. Look, if there are any questions, in the sort of chat or something, please post them in there. I won't sort of start talking with everybody at the moment. But what I thought that we might have a look at next are some of the basic tools in Paint Shop. If you use a different paint program, and that's absolutely fine, I'm afraid it means that you will have to find the equivalent tools in, for example, Photoshop or whatever else you might decide to use. For better or for worse, we generally show the techniques in Paint Shop because I think it's a good balance between sort of simplicity and function. So let me just working with the picture of Idris Elba or whatever. I want to just reiterate what I tried to say this morning, but hopefully a bit more clearly this time, about what the way that EFIT treats objects or layers which are exported into the paint program. Like, it is quite useful and important to understand that. If I wanted, as for example, Stuart had suggested there, to change the hairline, all right, on the hairstyle, one way I can do that is to go to the export tool, select the hair, and you may notice that it says include the other layers to form the background and foreground. That's good. We want that. So what it means is when we go into Paint Shop, you'll see the whole of the EFIT image, exactly as it's looking now. But the only layer that I'm allowed to change will be the hairstyle. Or rather, I could make changes to the other layers, but EFIT will just ignore them. So basically, the idea of this is that you want to alter the hairstyle and the hairstyle only. So while we're in Paint Shop, it may be, or at least I hope that I can sort of give you a few tips or a few things to try, which I'll ask you to try on your own, in a moment, that will be useful. I'm going to try to change that hairstyle to make it receding. Right, I'm not going to try to respect how Idris Elba looks. I can't even remember now. But one thing that we could do, bearing in mind that we are working only on the hairstyle tool, is to use the eraser tool to try to remove some of the hair. All right. Now, those of you who've done training before will probably have heard me say this, really, but the secret of using these tools well is always in getting the correct settings. So with this eraser tool, there's a bunch of settings up here, and I'm going to do it in a manner of speaking all wrong to begin with, right, because one learns that way. I want to erase some of the hair to try and make it look like it's receding. If I do that, it just removes the hair completely. Obviously, it looks ridiculous. Now, the reason for that is that, well, one of the reasons for it is that the opacity, right, is at 100%. That means it will remove whatever's under the brush completely. So one thing I could do is actually drop that. Let me drop it, say, to 30, for example. Well, it looks a bit better, but probably still not quite natural. The other thing, sorry, let me do that again. The other thing you might notice is at the moment, the hardness of the brush is set to 100. And that is what's responsible, really. I don't know how well you can see that, but you get like a hard edge around the brush. Can you see there where I've kind of slightly erased it? That also looks very unnatural. So in most cases, what you want to do is have the hardness. I would say most things that you do with faces and in Paint Shop, you want to have the hardness set low. Not always, but set it low. When I try it again now, well, I get a sort of slightly softer effect, right? Something like that. More blended. But the real secret for this one is going to be to drop the density right down, because this gives you a sort of slightly speckly effect. Let me reduce the brush size. I just want to try and give you an indication, you see. As I push the brush into the thing there, it's a bit like I can gradually remove the hair, but kind of not all at once, but in a way that looks sort of fairly natural. I roll that back, for example. Yeah, can you see that? So I'd just like to repeat that because I want to ask you to have a go yourself in a moment. So for those of you that are already competent and such things, my apologies, but in my humble view, you can never practice too much. So what we did there is, right, with the settings in the brush, the size is kind of obvious, I think, so I don't really need to explain the size. The bigger I make it, the bigger the brush appears. But the secret really is to get the opacity and the density and the hardness correct. If we had the hardness at 100, let's just go back to the wrong way of doing it, right? And the density at 100 and the opacity at 100. Sorry, it's a bit tricky to, yeah. And I'm going to try and remove, say, some hair from the side now. You can see how brutal it is, right? It just completely removes it in a way that looks completely unnatural. So remove it a bit at a time, right? That's the secret of that, is getting the opacity down, right? You can need to have it really quite low, you know, and then that means when you can just keep pushing the brush, almost like you're painting, yeah. The hardness, drop that right down, because that means you'll get a softer effect, softer looking effect. And then the density is what gives you that sort of speckly effect. It kind of lets the skin show through underneath. And you can have a little experiment just till you get the kind of effect that you want. So, for example, I might decide to give him a little bit of a shave at the side. In fact, interestingly, I probably need, here's an example of where at the edge I might want to actually make it a bit more brutal at the side there. I might change my hardness right there, just so I can get rid of that little bit of hair at the side. I don't really want the this shot. Give me a second. Sorry. And actually, you should do what I'm not really doing there, which is it's usually very helpful, I think, in paint shop to work on quite a large scale. Okay, so you can kind of see more clearly what it is that you're doing. Right. Okay. Rather than me fiddle around in front of you, what I'd like to suggest really is that you don't take any pains over what EFIT you like. Just create any EFIT you like. Just any face you like. Could be a white face, a black face, an Asian face. It really doesn't matter. Choose a hairstyle, and then see if you can actually, you know, create this kind of receding hairstyle effect. It's obviously it's easier on certain hairstyles. If you've got a very long hairstyle, sometimes it can be a little trickier to make it look natural. But the key, just to repeat, is to get the opacity setting right, drop the density, and drop the hardness, right? And then when you push the hair back into the scalp, you should be able to create this effect of the hairline sort of receding or hair loss. All right. Obviously, I can't really give you a face to work with, you know, online. So you just choose one, and perhaps, you know, I can give you, you know, 10 minutes or so to 10, 12 minutes to have a little play around with that. And if there are any questions, post them in the chat and I'll try and respond. Oops. It's like so many things, really. I'd like to be able to say these are the settings that you will always need, you know, but it isn't usually like that. But once you understand the way in which these tools work, you'll see that just by adjusting those settings, you know, you can get the right effect. If you're not so familiar with these programs, then if you want to undo, what you've done, and that's quite normal, all right? In other words, that you don't always get the effect you want immediately. You've got the back arrow there for undo, and you can use that, virtually unlimited amounts of time, or you can use the shortcut Control Z, which basically undoes what you did, on the previous step. Somebody on the chat has made I think, very important reminder for me, which is how can you make the eyebrows lighter? You can certainly do that in Paint Shop, but it's a little bit hidden in EFIT6, and it's best to try and see if you can do it first in EFIT6 because it's much easier. So once you finish doing this exercise, I would just take a little jump back into EFIT and show you how you can make the eyebrows lighter. It is, in all honesty, I think one of the things that is a little bit problematic sometimes with the EFIT, EFIT generated images. It tends quite often to make the eyebrows quite thick and dark. And when well, basically sometimes in a way that's not completely realistic. There is, however, a way of adjusting it which works quite well, and I will show you that. But it's a little bit hidden within EFIT's menus. So the suit and tie, because it's a kind of set, is actually under the thing jackets, under the description jackets. You should find some in there. Okay, folks. If it's okay, I would like to sort of gently move on to maybe show you another relatively simple tool, but quite useful effect. And perhaps to show you at its best, I'm going to take the same image, but I'm going to load a new hairstyle on it. Okay, so I'm not going to save the changes I made there. Okay, so what I'd like to just show you now are some relatively simple techniques using two tools for altering the appearance of the hairstyle. One is the warp tool, the other one is the erase tool. So if we go to the export tool, and in this case, I only want to make changes to the hair. So I'm going to select just the hair as the layer that's going to be modified right in the EFIT, and then we'll export it. Okay, so there's our image. Now note on Paint Shop, you see we've got the hairstyle, the layer is the one that's active, the one that's colored blue. That basically means my tools will operate on that layer, but they won't operate on the background. So the first thing I'm going to do is to choose this tool that's called the warp brush. Right, I'm sorry that these icons are rather small. I tried before to see if the program would allow me to blow them up and make them bigger so you can see them. But unbelievably, that's actually the biggest that Paint Shop will allow you to make them. So there we are. Anyway, so we go to the warp brush, just click on that. And as with all of the tools in Paint Shop, warp has a number of different settings. Right, it looks a bit intimidating at first. But but once you get used to it, you'll find, all of the tools, they might have slightly different settings, but they all essentially work in a similar way. So the warp has a number of different modes. One is called the push mode. Let's just have a quick look at what that does. It means I can push stuff around like that, yeah. Another one is called the expand mode. And it basically means that if I place that on a thing, it would expand it, make it grow bigger. It's probably not showing it very well, but trust me, that's what it does. This one shrinks it. And these ones I don't think you'll ever use. They twirl things around and they're a bit fancy, and I think they're used more in photography, not so much with actual images and faces. The most important one, I think by far, is the push mode. So the warp brush should be in the push mode. I could select the size of my brush, right? And I'm going to choose a big one here for reasons that you'll see in a moment, the 250. And then these settings here, the hardness and the strength, let me just try and give you a feeling. If they're at their maximum, it's almost better to see it than to explain in words. But what I'm going to try and do is just shape the hairstyle on the head. Now, if I have it like this, you can see that it's pretty sort of brutal. In other words, it has a small movement of the mouse results in a big change in the appearance, and it tends to look a bit sort of unrealistic, right? Like that. If, however, they are dropped, so the hardness is actually down low and the strength, sorry, and so the strength, could be 50 or something like that, maybe less, then I've got this possibility of sort of shaping the hairstyle. So let's say if the hairstyle was a little bit more square on his head, something like that, or it came further down his a little bit further down his face or something like that. I can tease out the hair in various ways, and by changing the size of the brush, I can even a bit bigger. Sorry. Maybe I can even tease out some of the individual sort of ringlets or something like that. I'm not sure if I've necessarily chosen the best type of hairstyle to show you with this, but it's actually very powerful, honestly, to be able to just change the way in which the hairstyle sits on the head by altering its shape. And the secret often is to have a nice, big, soft brush, right? So don't try and sort of fiddle with it on a small scale like this. You often end up with something that doesn't look very natural. But if I wanted, for example, now to bring it back so that it follows the shape of his head more, I might have a much better result by saying, let me choose a nice big brush like that. I'm just going to give it a nice a nudge in, you see, so it sits a bit more closely around his head like that. Hope that makes some sense when I'm saying that. Or again, I might want to push the ringlets, up so they're not dangling up quite so much around his face, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Now the other tool that you can use, I think that's particularly useful for hairstyles, sometimes is to use the erase tool. And this is basically for removing hair. So if, for example, somebody liked the hairstyle, but they didn't like the sort of ringlets sort of poking out or on the forehead, I can basically erase those. And for that, I would generally want my opacity to be quite close to the maximum. I don't really want to see any hair remaining. And the density would also be at this maximum. But I might drop the hardness just so that I don't get a kind of impression of the hair sort of suddenly sort of stopping. Oops, hang on a minute. So if I do that now, what I should be able to see is I can sort of push away, you see, and it just kind of, see, because I left a little bit of softness on the brush, the hardness, you see, it means it still remains slightly naturally sort of blurred as I do that, And I can change the size of my brush, to suit me as I do this, right? And you end up with something that looks fairly natural, you see. I'm just removing these effects that, in this particular case, let's just imagine that's what the witness told me, didn't have all these bits that were poking out, but, something like that. Something that's a little bit more managing. Okay, so let me invite you again to just try something similar to that. You don't have to choose the same face. You can choose any face you like in EFIT and load any hairstyle on it. But I think it would be a good skill to kind of have under your belt if you felt confident in using the warp tool and the eraser tool to basically affect a change on the hairstyle. Yeah, it could be to change its shape on the head. It could be to take away part of the hairstyle. And the secret, as I say, is to choose these settings appropriately. And again, if you have any questions about what you're trying, post it in the chat, and I might be able to make a suggestion. But look up here, size of the brush, the hardness, which means does it blur a bit as you get towards the edges of the brush. The density, which means is there any sort of speckly effect in the brush, or does it act like a solid brush? And then the opacity. The thickness, by the way, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. The thickness changes the shape of the brush. Let me just show you that. So if I momentarily make a bigger brush, so you can see there, hopefully on the screen there, my big circular brush. If I change the thickness down to say 20, I get that brush that's that shape. Yeah, and I can also rotate that as well. So, and this can occasionally be quite useful for some things. So, for example, if I'm trying to follow, it's not a good hairstyle to show it on, but I'm trying to follow the lie of the hair in some way, I can actually use it sometimes for sort of flicking, in a certain direction. Yeah, maybe I could even show you that. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a bit, but maybe I could try and give you some impression of how you might use that to give an impression of sort of slight graying or something in the hairstyle. So what I might do here is I've got a white brush, but I'm going to drop the opacity right down. Maybe I'm only going to do it to like 10%. I'm going to make the brush perhaps just a little bit bigger, maybe something like that. So we get the density, I'll keep at 100, and the hardness, that should be okay. Yeah, maybe I'll do it about 30 or something. And then I just have a little experiment. I think, well, can I sort of follow the line of the hair? Can I introduce a bit of graying in there, but in a way that kind of looks natural? Like where I'm just, I'm kind of looking at the way the hair is. And I can roll it back and see if I'm starting to get the effect that I want. I've actually chosen quite a difficult example for myself here, but never mind, that's fine. It's surprising sometimes if you use these tools well, the difference, even just a small suggestion of it can actually make, I don't have to paint, all of it grey, but always I'm asking myself, is the effect I'm creating sort of realistic? Why is this important? Well, it can be important because the simple fact of the matter is that EFIT doesn't really give you streaked or coloured hair naturally. It gives you, blonde hair, it gives you brown hair, it gives you black hair, it gives you ginger hair, etc. But you won't get the sort of effects that you get sometimes through natural highlighting, but often through dyes and things like that, where people dye their hair. Same idea here. You see, what I've done here is I've chosen the paintbrush, but by choosing my basic color, which is white, but then dropping the opacity right down, I'm effectively painting a bit of white, but allowing mostly black to show through. And that's what enables me to get this kind of suggestion of hair that's beginning to grey. I mean, the shape I've got of the brush may not even be the best one. I could probably make this work just as well with a circular brush, right, where the thickness is back to normal. Always good to work on a big scale as well, and then you kind of roll it back to see whether you're starting to get the effect that you want.
Is het alweer dan?
Suppose it must be said that something like this is one of the slightly more time-consuming tasks, but on the other hand, it's a detail that I think can make quite a bit of difference. And the more you practice it, the quicker you'll be at it, especially when you know what's required to get a kind of realistic effect.
Dus maar het feit is zouden wij als hij pas zit te stellen.
Okay, folks. Hope I'm not jumping around too much, but please continue, with that for a few more minutes. But if I could just interrupt you for a few minutes, because I think this is definitely worth knowing. I said earlier that EFIT has a tendency to produce eyebrows that are probably a little bit too thick and dark. When I say thick, I don't necessarily mean wide, but the hair appears to have very little texture or not sufficient texture because they're too dark. So if I, show you, for example, a collection of faces, that the hair, so the eyebrows there are all perhaps rather dark, but not showing much texture. If I wanted to try and make them lighter, perhaps I could do this by first of all, let's just change the hair color to sort of a brown sort of color, right? So there we are. We've got a different type of hair color now, and the eyebrows obviously look a bit strange because they're essentially a completely different color from the hair. But inside the hair tool, under the color tab, you'll see that there's something that says eyebrows, alter eyebrow color. Now, part of me wants to apologize for the fact that it's so buried away there. But we some time ago decided that nonetheless, that's probably the best place to have it because it's an alteration of the hair, on the face, right? The eyebrows. The eyebrows are not treated like objects that you stick on, but they're actually part of the face. So what you do is you check the thing that says alter eyebrow color. And then in principle, you can choose the eyebrow color that you want, right? Blonde eyebrows, slightly darker ones, etc. Or sometimes that works quite well just in itself, right? However, what you can also do is alter the opacity and the lightness to kind of get the shade that you want. So if, for example, I drop the opacity a bit, what I think you might see is that you see a bit more texture in the eyebrows, a bit like you see the individual hair, if you like, in the eyebrows a bit more. Whereas when it's a bit darker, you don't see it quite so well. So if I go back, for example, and I make the eyebrows dark again, you can see if I drop the opacity, then you tend to see and they basically look a bit more natural. They don't look like sort of stuck on party eyebrows, but they look like proper eyebrows. Right, and that's through getting the right opacity setting and lightness. Okay, so that basically is the sort of hidden secret that sometimes that the eyebrows don't come out totally satisfactorily when you're using the easy mode, but you can alter them. All right, inside the hair tool, under the color, so hair color, and then you can actually alter the eyebrow color there. Well, I see Ben there is giving me a hot tip, so I'm going to just do that about how to change the size of the icons in Paint Shop. Okay. Somebody has just asked about what happens. Sometimes it happens that when you're trying to change the settings on your tools, they basically start floating. But we can use them when they're floating, but it's better, I think, to have them what they call docked. And what you might notice is if I do a left click, can you see there's like a little white arrow there, right? When I push it there, that means it's going to dock it, or if you like, park it at the top of the canvas up there. All right. So when I do that, that means it will basically go back to where it was. It's slightly annoying that I find it irritates me because it's rather sensitive to the fact that if you accidentally move that like that, you accidentally move it, then you have basically floating tool settings. But basically, just grab them, put them back up to your little docking bay, and then they'll appear back up there. Right. There's a few questions popping up in the chat, and I'll try to address those. One of those is about how to change the shirt color. So I'll certainly try to show you how to do that, because I think there's something useful to be learned in the process as well. Just before I move on, however, we talked about the eyebrows a bit, and well, because the way EFIT works is that you don't get like a set of real eyebrows that you kind of stick on the face. So what it means is that they do tend to look a bit sort of uniform. The shape varies, and that's good, but you don't get like, flyaway eyebrows that sometimes people have, where the hair kind of goes a bit wild, where they're a bit overgrown and need to be trimmed and things like that. So if that's an important feature of a person's face, then you need to really try to, introduce that effect using Paint Shop. And I think one possible way of doing it, it can be a little bit tricky, but one possible way of doing that is by using the push tool. So what I've done here is I've just exported the face, right? The actual face, not a particular item other than that. And I'm going to try to give a slightly sort of flyaway effect to the eyebrows. So what this means really is I need to, first of all, select a brush. You can probably see there, hopefully, can you see that I've got a brush there that's a bit like a vertical strip? Can you see that? Yeah, if I'm wobbling it around. Don't know how easy it is for you to see it remotely, but perhaps if I make it even bigger, you might see it now. Right, so there's my brush. And possibly I want to actually rotate it slightly, I would say, something like maybe 20 degrees, something like that. No, it makes the opposite. Yeah, that would work over here. Now look, just to get the feel of it, I'm going to select the brush over here that says push. And as always, we've got these settings up here. I'm going to start with them at their maximum. So the opacity is 100. Rotation, we're not going to change that because that means it's been rotated through 20 degrees. The thickness also is what's giving me the sort of vertical brush. But the density I'm going to leave at 100, and the hardness I'm also going to set to 100. And let's just see what happens, right? Basically, it's designed to take the text that you've got and push it, you see, into whatever region you go into. But that's obviously a bit crude, yeah? That doesn't look right. So, as always, we think, let's adjust those settings so that hopefully we get a more realistic effect. I think one thing I'd certainly want to do is to drop the hardness down, maybe to something quite low, perhaps 25 or so. I think the density needs to be fairly high because you don't want a speckly effect, but you could probably drop it to about 75 or something like that. And then the opacity, I'm going to try it at 60. And then let's just see, right, what kind of happens. And to make it realistic, you see, I mean, I probably should. I'm kind of rushing it because I don't want to sort of spend too long in it. But you know, obviously they're not all going to go. All these little flyaway bits are not all going to go in the same direction. So I can change the rotation, you know, and you know, kind of push in another direction, something like that. And even just a few little bits sometimes can create surprisingly. And then if you think, oh, it still looks a bit, you know, I'm not too happy about it. It looks a little bit, you know, stuck on. You can just soften it a bit. That usually helps. So I go to the soften brush. It just sort of smudges it, softens the impression of it all a bit. Let me just make the brush a bit bigger. Something like that. So I've not taken a great deal of care over that, but you can see that that's a slight, you know, rather different looking sort of eyebrow to the other one. It's got that slightly a flyaway, you know, effect. The other thing I think is also worth pointing out is that you can also do it by painting onto the eyebrows. Arguably, that's even more effective or even easier. So let's say for the other eyebrow, I'm going to try and make the eyebrow look a little bit grey. All right, just the eyebrows beginning to grey. So the way we're going to try that is I'm going to choose a paintbrush and yeah, I'm going to actually keep in this. I think I'm going to go for a circular brush here. So let me just make sure I've got that. Yeah, the thickness I'm going to go back up to 100. The thing about having a circular brush, you see, I can push in any direction I want. That's the nice thing about a circular brush, and you'll get the right effect. So look, let's select using the actual paintbrush white, and just to be clear about what's going on, I'm going to have all my settings at their maximum. Right, the opacity is at 100, density is 100, hardness is 100. And then let's watch what happens. Yeah, okay. That's obviously not quite what we want. Everything's at its maximum. So drop the hardness right down to 0. Maybe drop the density. I think about 75 will do you. But the critical thing here is the opacity, right? Because I want to give the impression of a sort of slight graying of the eyebrows, whatever. So I'm going to drop that right down to 10. And then we'll just see what happens as I kind of go in there. In fact, I'm going to make my brush even a bit smaller too. I think that's a bit too fat. I'm just kind of putting a suggestion of grey inside those eyebrows. I'm trying to follow really the direction that the eyebrow's going. And if I roll it back, you see what looks a bit crude on a scale like that, when you can see all the pixels, actually looks, you know, fairly good when you're actually looking at on a decent scale like that. So it's quite, you know, very, very simple effect. So very, very simple to do, but a reasonably effective, I think, you know. So you get, you know, kind of good effect for not too much effort. So let me try and do it over here. The flyaway eyebrow, you see, I'm just kind of giving it this impression of a bit of graying in there. You can do it a bit more carefully than I'm doing it. I'm just trying to give you the idea. Yeah. And if you feel that it's, you know, a bit sort of, how can I express it? Well, yeah, not quite realistic. Sometimes just taking a gentle soften. So you could go over to, you know, in the same set of tools, select the soften brush. Maybe drop that opacity down a little bit. And then you can, let me do this again quite big. And you just take a little sweep over it, you see. Can you see how it just blurs it, blends it in slightly, something like that, yeah? And then when you look at the face on a kind of slightly normal scale, you get an eyebrow that looks very different from the original, but looks, you know, fairly natural. Obviously, he's got two rather different eyebrows now, but that's not the point. Okay. I hope that's helpful, folks, because I just know that, that sometimes these are the things that can cause problems. The eyebrows can be a tricky one. And knowing that you can, basically reduce the color and make them a little bit more textured in EFIT is good to know. But it's also good to know that you can alter them in Paint Shop relatively easily if you know which tools to use. Right, so just to repeat, in case you want to sort of write this down or think about it as a recipe. In the first case, we basically just took the push tool. So you exported the face, you took the push tool, and then chose your settings on the push tool so that you can literally fleck or push the hair away from the rest of the eyebrow so it looks a little bit wild or unkempt. In the second case, we just selected a white paintbrush because we wanted to make the hair, the eyebrows look like they were starting to grey a little bit. And then in a very similar way, I just paint little flecks of grey in there, kind of in following the direction of the eyebrows, whatever. Okay. So, you end up with, something like that. But as I say, when you see it on a normal scale, it looks really, quite plausible, quite believable. And don't forget, of course, this is one thing that is worth saying about all this Paint Shop stuff, which is do the paint work if you're going to do some as well as you can. Obviously, you try to do that. But one thing that the super realism tends to be very forgiving of, or can sort of sort out for you, is kind of imperfections in the paintwork. Yeah, so for example, obviously I've just made those small changes to the eyebrows, but if I do the super aging, if I do the super realism now, I think what you'll find is that it will make that eyebrow into something that looks, quite realistic. Yeah, okay. It's lost the flecking a little bit. I have to confess that, but it has, it has introduced the sort of graying reasonably well there. Yeah. Anyway, that's something for you to kind of experiment for yourself a little bit. That you do the paintwork to the best of your ability, but sometimes the super realism can kind of blend any imperfections quite nicely if you go to the super realism tool. Okay, I'm going to answer this one in words, if that's all right. Because sorry, Donna, I see you sent this message 10 minutes ago. Somebody's asked when you've edited the image in Photoshop. I mean, I'm assuming, Donna, it's going to be the same. I don't know what Photoshop looks like when you're inside it, but basically, let me show you what happens in Paint Shop, and it'll be a similar mechanism. So it's this, that if you go into your paint program, so let me just very quickly just make a small change to the image. Whatever, I'm going to give him. Oops. I'm just going to basically lift the cheeks out a bit and darken underneath it. Doesn't really matter what. I'm sorry. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. It's just I'm making a change. Um, so when I close Paint Shop after having made some alteration, it comes back and it says save selected, close all, cancel, whatever. What you must do is just click on save selected. Don't change the name. Don't do anything else. Just click on save selected and it will import back into your paint program. If for some reason you find what you're seeing is or it doesn't behave in quite that way, all I can suggest is maybe take a screenshot, send it to us afterwards, and maybe we'll be able to help you out. But basically that's it. As long as you don't change the name of the file, yeah. Good. Okay. Well, hopefully that seems to have solved that particular problem. Okay. I think probably, we've got time for one or possibly even two more little things, but I'd like to leave. Yeah, I'll repeat the super realism thing gladly. Right. I'd like to leave a little bit of time, just for some questions at the end, or anything of that nature. We can put our mics back on. But two things, right? Firstly, just to repeat the super realism, I think it's important, Simon, that I make clear that unfortunately, I don't think, in fact, I'm almost certain that SAPs don't have the super real version, because I'm afraid that the EFIT version you've got is, goes right back to about 2017 or something like that. Naturally, we would like, as I'm sure you would, we'd like the SAPs to consider basically an update, because it's probably 10 years since the program was updated, but obviously there's all kinds of factors to consider there. Nonetheless, what happens is, once you've got your image, it's as simple as that. Literally, you go to the Super Real tab, you click on Show, and after a few seconds, it will basically produce a sort of photographic-like version of the EFIT, right? And if your witness prefers that, says, yeah, no, I'm had that for me captures, what he looked like best. And I think there are certain other advantages to have it sort of quasi-photographic. Then all you need to do is you say, right, that's it. Let me save it. And then you go to Show in Folder. Let me bring that over here. And you'll see that inside the folder where all your EFITs are stored, there'll be a version which is your raw. They look rather the same because they're on a small scale now, but there's your raw EFIT, right? And this here is, you see, it says S Real. That's the super real version, right? And you can just drag and drop those into, your sort of wanted poster or whatever. Simple as that. I just drag and drop it to wherever I want it to go. Right, once you've finished. If you save the super real version, you don't have to use it, obviously. But if for any reason you want to show the witness what a super real version might look like during the EFIT construction, you can generate it at any time. So, let's say, so this is what it looks like, Mr. Smith, but you can continue, and then it just reverts to the ordinary EFIT. And then I can just say, okay, let me change the hairstyle or something. I'm going to do it fairly randomly. Well, it's a bit of a crazy hairstyle, isn't it? But let's have this one, right? So there's another hairstyle. And I can do the same thing, which is, I can say, okay, show me what the super real version of that might look like. And again, it will do the same thing. Okay, hope that's clear. But the other thing I want, and this may take a little bit of time. Let me. The question of basically making the shirt white. In this particular case, it's quite awkward. I'm not making excuses, but it is more difficult than it might be under certain circumstances. However, I would like to try and show you how you might do that. If I go to the export tool and I choose the clothing, which is there, and then I export it. But well, the secret here really is that what I'm going to need to do, or the best way to do this, is to try to mask the region of the shirt. I forgot what you call masks in. Did you call them masks in Photoshop? I'm not sure. Really, selection. You have to select the region. You know. So of course, you see, I could take a paintbrush and then start to paint inside the region, but it's terribly difficult. You know. Let me just get the sensible size brush or something. You know, I start to try and paint inside the thing, but it's very difficult to actually, you know, keep that realistic, right? Not make it look patchy, not go over the edges and get unrealistic effects. So what you generally try and do is to mask off or make a selection for the region. So inside Paint Shop, and there are similar tools in Photoshop, there are selection tools, and their job is to basically fence off or select regions of the image so that your tool will only work inside that region. And there are some quick ones which I like a lot, like the magic wand, which can work very well if there's a clear distinction between the area that you want and the area that you don't. So let me just, if I can, just try and show you that, because for example, this magic wand tool would be very, very good for actually selecting the background. But what I can see there, then you see, is that when I select it, it's kind of said, right, group together all the pixels that belong to my background, but exclude the region of the, you know, the jacket and tie, whatever. In this case, that particular tool is not very effective. So what I'm going to do is show you a manual one, and we go to the tab that's called Freehand Selection, and then you go to Selection Type, and I think probably the safest one is to go what's called Point to Point. I'll blow the EFIT up, and then I'll try and show the image up, and I'll try and show you how that works. What you do is I want to mask off the whole of the shirt from the rest, all right, and then color it white. I'm going to do it first of all just for the color on the right, because it's quick and you'll get the principle. So I click here, then I move my mouse here, and I click again, and I click again, and I keep clicking, whatever, trying to follow the edge. Right, so I keep, so they're all left clicks, all right? I'm doing left clicks all the time. Right, left click, left, and then when I finally get to the end, right, I do a right click to join the region. Right, can you see there? I've actually got the region of the right lapel is selected, yeah? So now that that's happened, let's just be clear what's going on. If I take, say, a paintbrush or indeed any other tool, and I try to paint, let's get the opacity right up so we can see, so you can see what's happening. When I'm outside that region, nothing happens. But when I'm inside that region, it all happens, all right? So that's the very simple idea of the selection. Now, watch out for one thing, however. You might think, oh, the shirt was white, so I'm going to paint this region pure white. But if you do it with 100% opacity, generally speaking, the effect is, it looks very unsatisfactory. It just doesn't look realistic because it has no texture. All right, I'll try and show you what I mean. So let me just do, one big sweep through that region. Right there is sort of pure white. And if I hide the selection for a moment, let me just go, like that, and I sort of roll it back. It just doesn't look right. Do you agree? It looks like there's sort of something that's stuck on top of his, thing. It just doesn't look right. So what you generally do, let's just go back, is drop the opacity, even though it's white. Try it, maybe do it at sort of 40 or something, and just see what the effect is. Right, it's probably not quite enough. Well, I can either build it up, I can do like one sweep at 20 and one other sweep at 20, or try and do it all in one go. What I think I'll do is I'll do that, or I'll drop it at lower opacity, something like that, Okay, now that's not pure white, certainly, but you probably don't want to try and get it too white, because pure brilliant white would probably not quite look right. So I've only shown you it on that particular lapel, but what you can do is make a selection, and then you can add to that selection, or you can do it in bits, right? This is a rather difficult example. They're more difficult than some. But once I've got the selection, again, let me just go back a minute here. Like that. So there we are. That's my selected region. Then there are other tools that we can use. For example, I can use something called the flood fill tool. What the flood fill tool will do is it will drop all of this color into that region, all right, in one go, bump, because it's masked off, right? So rather than paint it with a brush, right, you can see it's got a bucket, that, and it's called the flood fill tool. So it's a bit like it pours the paint into the whole of that region, a bit like a swimming pool or something, in the walls. All right, so look, I think, I hope you agree, but maybe there's a bit of value in me. I'm going to do it on the other lapel as well, and just so that you're kind of clear about the process. So I will leave that particular selection alone. Sorry, let me. Sorry, folks. Photoshop seems to be being a bit glitchy with me. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Okay, we're going to do that again. Sorry, give me 2 seconds because something appears to be missing from my... Okay, no, it's just my scroll bar appears to have vanished off screen. I'm a bit, that doesn't matter. Just want to repeat that process, right, of making a selection. So we'd go up to the selection tool. In this particular case, we're going to go for freehand selection. And then you've got these different types, different ways of making a selection. And to be honest, I think the one that's called point to point, there are other more fancier ones. The freehand one is too tricky to use most of the time. But the point to point enables you to basically click, on the region that to sort of delineate the region. Oops, made a bit of a mistake there. Never mind. So I'm not doing this terribly carefully, but look, what I want you to see, I've selected that lapel. And now, because the mode of the selection is called add, right, you've got replace, add, or remove. What it means now is if I select another region, like the other lapel or the rest of the shirt, it will add it to the selection. All right. So now, basically, because I'm still in the selection tool, I should be able to click on this one and I'll start to include the other lapel in my selection, right? Like so. And then just for fun, why don't we just try and add the rest of it too? All right, so we'll put this in here, the rest of the shirt down there. What I actually want to do is include, see, I want to include that as well. So probably made a slight mistake, which we'll correct in a minute over on the other side. Right, so including most of the shirt, I've left a little bit there. So I'm going to pull a little trick here, which is from the selection tools. You've got one, as I say, it's called the freehand selection, but I could just go to the one that says freehand. And then what that literally enables you to draw the region that you want, you see. So I can just do that, and that adds it to the region, like so. So now I've got the region selected, however, and then now you could actually try to color it. And I said there are a number of ways you could do that. You could either do it by filling it with your chosen color, or selecting a paintbrush, perhaps starting with a low opacity, but making it a massive brush. And then I just literally sweep it in there like that. What can sometimes happen, and I think this is a case in point really, is there can be some quite awkward bits at the edge which look rather unnatural. If I, let me just do that one more time, perhaps. If I now remove the mask, like so, it doesn't look quite right, really, because it's not really blended with the rest of the thing. It can help if you basically either smudge or soften around the edges, perhaps to create a little bit more of a realistic blend with the rest of the image. Hang on. Oops. Sorry, I've realised I've accidentally selected the smudge, I think, and I meant to. Yeah. So let's try that one. So if I basically, select the smudge button, sorry, the soften button, I'm sorry. Somehow just doing that smoothing, between the edges tends to make it look like it blends in a little bit. Otherwise, it looks very strange, that very pixelated edge. Something like that. Okay, I've not done that terribly carefully, so sorry. I'm not making an excuse. I probably also, in hindsight, would probably need to do something, around the top of the tie there or something like that. But I shot myself in the foot a bit there by choosing a very difficult example. But the principle, I hope, is clear. Yeah. I mean, if we, I don't know how forgiving the super realism would be on that. It would be quite interesting to see, really, if we actually. It may not be. It may not do us, huge favors, but it may help a bit. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it helps a bit. Probably what's missing from that, if you're interested, is that it needs probably a little bit of shading underneath where the lapel and the rest of the shirt is, because there would be a natural bit of darkening there, and that's not there, and that's what tends to catch the eye. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in those minor details, but I hope that's helpful, at least by showing you the selection tools and how they can be used to to highlight certain regions of the face. Of the sketch, to create the effects that the witness actually wants. Just running through the things here about if any outstanding questions. Yeah, somebody's just asked there about making the cheekbones more pronounced. To be honest with you, the best way to do that is there are now some very good skin effects, I think, and if you go to either cheeks or even just face, there are usually some really quite good ones in there. Can you see there? That's it may not be the exact effect you want. There are many of them, but you choose the opacity right, and you get the effect of the cheekbones being a little bit more pronounced. You got, for example, there the effects of sort of slight dimples, highlights up under the what you call cheekbone. Something like that. See, when you see that without any effect at all, and then you see it with the effect, they are quite quite good for subtly aging. So here's, for example, here's one that makes the face look a little bit more drawn. But much easier to use these than to try to do them yourself, right? So that's quite a good one. See, there's one that says bony or gaunt. That's without the effect at all. I'd say his cheeks look quite fleshy. But as you start to add that effect, oh, excuse me, that's too much, right? As you add that effect in, he starts to look a bit more drawn, you see. It's a bit like the cheeks here are kind of catching the light, and here it's a bit more drawn. So I think the answer to that question, you know, Arvin, is like, have a good trawl through the skin effects in cheeks, and indeed I think in there are some in under face as well. But there's some quite, you know, quite effective ones inside there. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, it's terrible, isn't it? I feel like there's so much more that one could say. Perhaps it'll have to be for, you know, for another time, and I hope there will be another time, you know, fairly soon, because I think we've come round to the idea it might be good to do this, you know, fairly regularly. You know, obviously it may not be you guys next time that will come, or some of you might not. But you know, if you've got a few hours to spare, it can be quite useful just to bring them up to speed again. So yeah, all I can say really is yeah, thanks very much. I hope it's been helpful, you know, to all, or at least some of you. And if you have any questions subsequently, do feel free to email me and let me know, won't you? And I promise we'll do our best to respond. So yeah, and to those of you that have, you know, logged in from abroad, you know, again, thank you very much. It's actually very nice to see your faces, and you know, naturally we're pleased that you've made the effort to join us. So enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully see you soon. Bye bye.